Alright, what is up guys? I'm not sure how many people we're going to have today, but we're just going to get into it, and pretty much what today is going to be about is securing objectives. So when we talk about securing objectives, we're going to get right into it. So some of the first things that we need to talk about is timers, right? It's pretty obvious that if Grubs is up in 30 seconds, we pretty much have to go right there if we want to have a tempo advantage in order to take it. However, if our plan is to get Dragon, it takes around 30 seconds to clear a single side of the jungle and about a minute to move down and secure vision in the right places. Ideally, your goal is to get to an objective 1 minute before it spawns, right? So if an objective is going to spawn in 1 minute, your goal is to get there before that timer. That gives you enough time to secure vision, clear out enemy vision, and also set up for a potential pick to create a numbers advantage before we do the objective. Now, the reason why this slide specifically is just showing the junglers and the objectives that are spawning is one of the most important things for teams to realize is if I have an Amumu, right? And outside of the map, this is spawning in 30 seconds, but he's pathing bot. Probably not the smartest choice because once Nidalee clears here, they're going to move down and they're going to have tempo here. And by the time he clears his jungle here, he's going to waste a lot of time here. Maybe he'll be able to get off a gank bot if it's a good lane, or he's going to move top, and then we're pretty much giving up both objectives to the red team. But the important thing to realize about kind of what's happening here in terms of the rotations is that if you do have a jungler who's immediately coming out of base and then they're just cycling their camps and they're ignoring the objective, then as a laner, you're also ignoring the objective. You need to be aware of where the enemy jungler is, but as the bot lane, if we have this wave shoved up and your jungler is not coming to the drag, we're not trying to do the drag, okay? It's their responsibility to set up what objective they're going to go for, and bot lane trying to 2v1 the drag here and then getting to half health and potentially getting killed by the other bot lane is a worst case scenario because the enemy team is just going to clean up drag anyways. So one of the first things when we talk about securing objectives is if your jungler is not here, it is a good rule of thumb that you are not trying to go for the objective. That's just a given. Now, if that means that all you do is you run over here and you drop a ward and then you go back, that's great. If all that means is, okay, my jungler's not here, the enemy bot lane's at the dragon, and there's a cannon wave right here, we have the opportunity to shove this cannon wave real quick, crash it into tower, and then we're just going to back off to safety so they lose some CS and we get some chip damage on this tower, right? That's perfectly fine. There's an optimal way to play weak side and to kind of stem the bleeding when you're giving an objective, and that's what you want to be looking for. But the rule of thumb that we're covering on this slide is if your jungler is not headed to the objective and they don't have smite and they don't want to fight for the objective, do not force it, right? Worst case scenario, that you lose the objective anyways, and then everybody flames you because the jungler wasn't there, and then your team mental booms and the game just got a whole lot harder, right? Just because a team gets 3 grubs, just because a team gets 6 grubs, just because they get first drag or second drag, it does not guarantee them the game, right? Elder Dragon, Baron, 3rd Drake, 4th Drake, these are the big objectives that you really want to fight around. But outside of those, you don't have to overforce in the early game. It's not worth throwing your game for it. So that's going to be kind of the first thing that we talk about. The second thing that we're going to talk about here is going to be something a little bit more interesting. It's going to be about team comps specifically. So when we look at these two team comps, this is a very clear indication that this composition is set up for team fighting, right? We have a lot of AoE, we have a lot of CC, we have a lot of big frontline tanky members, and some really hard to get on backliners with high damage, right? So because of this, this team has a much better team fight composition in a front to back team fight. So then the question is, okay, what does this team then have? Because every team's got strengths. If this is the team fight oriented composition, then what is this composition? This composition would be what I would call a poke or a split push composition. Now, what that means is what you have here is you have 4 characters who heavily outrange these characters, right? So what that means is you have the ability to, let's say that we're playing around drag here. Let's say that this team is all in the drag pit right here, all 5 members, right? Our team here has the ability to throw skill shots from this wall. They have the ability to throw skill shots from over here. They have the ability to throw skill shots from over here without risking a full engage in river, right? So they have the ability to poke them off the objective. So they're looking to play a slow fight. They're looking to play a fast all-in fight, right? Because in the extended fight, this team is going to win. In the short trade and engage, this team's going to win because they have more AoE and more CC. Seems pretty self-explanatory on paper, right? So the question then is, well, wait a second, Strike. When we're looking at this, obviously, this team is better for securing things like drag, things like Baron. So then how do we react to this? What are we supposed to do? Well, that's a great question. In every single composition, hopefully what you have is you have certain things that activate or act as win conditions. Garen will most likely be able to beat Ornn late game in a split push because of his natural armor pen and the fact that he does missing health true damage, right? So Garen can be a complete and total nuisance, in the side lane while the blue team is focusing this dragon, threatening to take towers, threatening to push up and take inhibitors, and making this team have to drop a member off to go match him in the cross map, right? Which now breaks this composition up and they lose a big piece of their engage, right? Another way that this can be done is if you have the ability and you have the tempo advantage and you get here 1 minute before, right? Like we talked about when you're trying to set up vision and everything, you could get Nidalee to put traps down in here, Garen to put traps down in here, etc. What we do have here is we may not have as much CC, but what we do have is we have a much higher one-shot damage output with these members because none of them are building tank for the most part. Garen is most likely building bruiser, and that's going to be the closest thing, right? So if a Maokai, an Ashe, a Hui, and a Mumu makes the mistake of walking into one of these areas and we get there first, potentially we get a pick and then it's much easier to secure the objective, right? So when you're looking at your team composition and how you want to play the game out, it's important for you to realize, depending on what your role is, what should I be doing and where is our win condition to get and secure the objective. So let's talk about that and kind of expound on that a little bit. Top lane. We made it very clear that what Garen wants to do is Garen wants to push in. Obviously, what Ornn wants to do is Ornn is going to want to push in at the same time. Now, the reason why Ornn is going to want to push in is different. Garen wants to push in order to pull this team apart, in order to split up their ability to team fight. Ornn wants to push in order to make Garen go match so that they can have all 5 team members together, right? What they want is completely opposite to the other, and that's dependent on the champion identity of the champion you're playing and also the composition that you're in, right? Likewise, what Nidalee is looking to do is secure a pick. What a Mumu is looking to do might be to secure a pick, but is probably looking to link up with his team and run a front to back. That's what's going to be optimal. At the same time, Xerath, Nidalee, Ezreal, Lux, right? All of these people are looking to get a pick. Now, Garen is playing in the top lane, so we talked about how top lane interacts. Jungle is obviously always going to be fishing around these areas before an objective. So if you see that in 1 minute this is spawning, you need to be operating under the assumption that if I'm Nidalee, and let's say that I'm on my blue buff, Amumu is hanging out somewhere in this area. Until we see him on the map up here or over here or anything else, the assumption needs to be that this guy is hanging out somewhere in fog around here. Operating under the assumption that he's not is quite often what leads people over-aggressing into fog and then getting picked before objectives. Now, as a mid laner, in the early game, your goal is obviously to get shoved, because once you get shoved and you pin the enemy laner under tower, it gives you priority and the ability to move to the objective. But let's say that we're in mid game, right? And let's say that bot lane has transferred mid and mid lane has transferred bot, as per usual, around 14-15 minutes or after first tower falls bot. So Hui, in the same way as top lane, and Xerath in the same way as top lane, are looking to do the same thing based around their positions. Xerath is probably looking to push up so that he can join his team and look for a pick. Hui, same exact thing, looking to push up so that he can join his team for a pick. Now, the interesting thing about these two is what their goal is similar to that, where we're trying to push up so we can get priority and tempo, pretty obvious. But more importantly, your support and your Ashe, right, as your AD carry, their goal is going to be to secure vision and all of the surrounding river entry points for the objective. So if I am Maokai in this instance, and let's say that we are looking for this drag in 1 minute, we see both of the enemy laners here. We're also right here and everything. Well, I know that I don't really have to worry about Lux and Ashe, or Lux and Ezreal jumping on my Ashe, so to speak, if Ashe is back here playing under tower, right? So this wave is crashed, Ashe is going to rebound it back. I'm Maokai. I can walk over here and I can throw a little sapling here. I can throw a little sapling here. I can throw a little pink in this bush, right, to secure vision on the backside of pit, and secure vision right here. I can throw a little ward here, and then I can move up into the mid lane and I can start pressuring this so we can get our shove off. But what we've done is, prior to 1 minute, we've secured an area of safe entry. And this is something that you see happen very rarely in your games, and very rarely is it identified in your games. But safe entry is super important, and it usually falls to the supports in the AD carries and sometimes the junglers to identify this. It is a mix of clearing vision 1 minute prior to the objective, but also placing vision. And what I mean by safe entry is, tell me if this sounds familiar. All 5 of us are coming out of base. We want to drag it in 1 minute. This entire area of the jungle is completely dark, and we have 1 ward here. This is a very scary situation, right? Versus, let's say that only this side of the jungle is dark, right? This is dark. Everything else here, up, completely warded. Well, what this does is, your AD carry can easily go here and catch this wave, and then the other 4 members of the team have the ability to move up further into the map and can test vision in the river and everything without worrying that any of these players are going to jump out of a bush and immediately blow you up, right? And safe entry can happen on either side of an objective pit. But the most important thing you want to do as an individual player is, if your team has all of their wards here and only 2 members of the enemy team are showing right here, don't be a hero, okay? Don't be that Hui who's like, I'm going to get off the sickest flank that's ever been done in League of Legends, and I'm going to sneak here, and I'm going to sneak over here, and then I'm going to sneak in here, and then I'm going to get here, and I'm going to totally catch these people out. Because what you don't know is, while you're doing your one-man hero flank, there's 3 people sitting in this bush, you get killed, and now your team's in a 4v5 because you didn't want to work with the free information that was given to you with this side of the jungle, right? Now, it sounds kind of harsh to put it that way, but how often in your games have you seen this player, right, throw an easy objective for your team, even though you have the stronger objective fight, because they simply won't walk through here? So the question then is, well, how do I get people to do that, Strike? I mean, they make their own decisions. I can't control my teammates. You're absolutely right. And there's this wonderful button called the assist ping, right? It looks like this. It looks like a little flag. Ping that. Ping that all the way over here, and then ping warning. Ping danger, ping this is an unknown area, there are enemies missing, right? Maybe they listen, maybe they don't. But planting an idea in someone's head because they're brainless is a lot more likely to do something than to let them make a decision in isolation, because chances are this guy's probably not thinking a lot in the first place. So you giving him some, direction is more likely to stick. So we'll kind of move on to the next part here. And this is objective tempo, which I love talking about tempo and priority. There's some terms that are thrown around a lot in League of Legends, but not always fully understood. So points to remember when it comes to objective tempo are listed here. Who arrives first? This is the easiest way to describe tempo in the entire game to anyone at any point ever at all. So people could say, I need to reset here because of my tempo. And people are like, that doesn't make sense, but you're going back to base. Well, put it this way. Because Garen reset first, he got out of base first, which means he gets to grubs first before Ornn, because Ornn resets second. Okay? That's how tempo works. So how long does it take you to clear is important when it comes to tempo. Because if we're saying, hey, I'm a Mumu. My clear is arguably faster than Nidalee. So I have the faster clear, right? Nidalee has the slower clear. But Nidalee got out of base first. And Nidalee's already done her Gromp. She's already done her Blue. She's on her Wolves. And I just got to my Krugs. Well, it's great that you have the faster clear. But because you didn't arrive first, you are down in tempo as the Amumu, right? And the Nidalee is up in tempo. The Nidalee will get to grubs first. So that's something that you need to think of as a jungler. That's something that you need to identify as a laner, because even if you can get there first, what's the first thing we covered? Nothing objective-wise matters if you don't have your jungler, because you need that smite. So the other thing that we need to talk about is how fast tempo can change. So ping, what does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, let's talk about what that means. I'm Xerath. I have tempo on grubs right now. Right now I have tempo on grubs. I'm going to be there first. I'm going to put this ward down, right? Hui is going to shove in this wave. It's a cannon wave. Let's say that. Okay, so now there's a wave here. When Xerath has to go back to catch this wave, now who has tempo? Well, immediately now the Hui has tempo, right? And the Xerath has lost tempo. He's now in second place. He's not going to be first to the objective. He may have been first to the objective to apply vision, which is great because we've still got a window of opportunity before it spawns. But in the immediate 1 minute before, he's going to be behind. Now, ideally, what our Xerath is going to want to do after he gets this vision down right here or right here is he's going to want to come back to the mid lane. He's going to want to shove this out as fast as possible, regardless of if he misses 1 or 2 CS. If it is known that we're going to fight for this and that it's been pinged, hey, we want to take grubs, right? And what you have to do with that information is you have to consistently give it to your teammates, right? If we're playing as the red team right now, there are a couple things happening here, right? So I'm just going to do this and I'm going to make a little area here. And what I want to pretty much cover, let me draw this better. We'll just do it like this. This is all fog, right? This is all fog. So we have no clue what's on the other side of this. So there are a couple things that I want to see come out. First off, if I'm the jungler, I should be tracking the other jungler. I might know that a Mumu is mirroring my clear. So what I want to see is I want to see some missing pings over here. I want to see the next thing is I want to see Garen put some missing pings here and then put some on the way pings here. As Xerath, I want to see some on the way pings. I want to see a ward come down and then Hui is moving up and then I want to see an on the way ping here. Nidalee, I want to see some assist pings here and I want to see another question mark ping here once I get to this side of the map. Now that seems like a lot, right? That seems like, oh my gosh, there's so many pings coming out. But at the same time, this bot lane knows 100% that we need to play back. Because everything's happening up here, nothing is happening down here. Garen knows that I need to push out this wave as fast as possible and clear this wave as fast as possible so I can rotate down and help secure vision and help secure these grubs. Xerath knows that he needs to move over and catch this wave as quick as possible after he gets his vision down. Nidalee knows that she might have to skip her chickens or her red buff if this spawns faster in order to use her team's tempo and the vision they've set up before Ornn can get out from under tower here and move into the river, right? And our goal here by doing all of this is to set up an extremely favorable 3v2 situation. Because early in the game, there are a lot of champions that are really strong, especially with some of the level 6 power spikes that happen. But ideally, in most 3v2 situations, if played correctly, you should not be losing. You may lose a player, but overall, you should be coming out ahead in kills, and you should definitely be securing the objective if that number advantage overall means that the enemy jungler is not present. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of tempo. Now, the next thing that we're going to move to is we're going to move to priority. Now, priority is very similar to tempo, but it only matters in certain instances. A lot of people talk about, well, I had priority all the time, and we didn't do anything with it. So why priority matters, a good way to put it, is priority matters for securing ideal macro states. So what does ideal macro states mean? Ideal macro states means, hey, the enemy has to make a choice, either 1 or 2. And no matter what choice they make, they're both going to lose something. Now, how is that possible? Well, let's make it very clear with an illustration here. Let's say that this is a double stacked wave, right? And Malachi and Ashe are pushing it up and in. Amumu's on his way to drag. Nidalee's on her way to grubs. Xerath grubs. Garen grubs after he shoves this wave. Hui is shoving this way. So right now, we'll take a look at 2 players on the teams. First, what we'll do is we'll take a look at Xerath. Based on Xerath's position, he has 2 choices. He either has to immediately go get grubs, right? And he can get grubs, but if he gets grubs, right, he's going to give up the wave mid that Hui is crashing into him. And likewise, if he goes to the wave, his team might end up in a 2v2 and lose grubs, right? This is a lose-lose situation for the Xerath because he doesn't have priority. Now, he for sure has tempo, right? He's definitely going to get here first, but it's still going to be a lose-lose situation. So tempo may allow you to secure objectives, but priority allows you to secure ideal macro game state. Okay? It makes it so that no matter what the enemy is doing, they have to choose between a lose-lose. Now, likewise, bot lane has to do the same thing, right? We could go contest drag and potentially poke them off of this, but if we do, we're going to lose the wave, right? And Ornn has the same exact situation. I could potentially go to grubs, right? Option 1, option 2, but, well, actually, technically, it would be option 1, option 2, right? I could go to grubs, but if I go to grubs, I'm going to lose the wave that Garen crashed into me. If I go to the wave, I might not be able to make it to grubs. Force the enemy into a choice. Now, the other thing that's really important about setting up ideal priority is it allows you to set up vision. So Xerath can get out here, sure, and he can get a ward down here. But as soon as he moves back, Hui can move out here and secure vision just as easily because since he shoved this wave up in here, he probably has vision of the Nidalee crossing over. Or Nidalee may have gone up to get a minion or 2. So what it does is it creates a bubble of protection because the minions have already scoped out this entire area in fog, which makes it easier to move and then apply his own vision. Likewise, when Malachi and Ashe crash this double stacked wave bot, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to rotate off and secure vision here, secure vision here, secure vision here, etc. Right? And the reason why is because it's exactly what we said earlier. For the enemy support, it is either contest vision, right? Or lose all of the wave XP, right? Because you can't have both. So now, no matter what the enemy chooses, it is a lose-lose. Now, The other thing that priority does, depending on when and where your jungler is and if they're going for the objective, right, is likely Hui is not going to move here to secure vision because Hui is setting up ideal macro, and he's probably going to set up vision on this side of the river, because the last thing that priority can be used for is it can be used for securing a tempo advantage. Because we have crashed a wave here, we can move for anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds without missing a single minion worth of XP or gold, and we will be first to the objective, and that's the same for bot lane as well after they crash this wave. So this is why it's so important to have priority and to understand tempo as a laner and as a jungler. If you're the jungler in this instance and you're ignoring these wave states and running top to fight grubs, you're trolling, okay? You have to play around your winning lanes to a degree, because your winning lanes are what set up an ideal game state in order to secure objectives and push closer to the enemy nexus, right? Now, if this is a losing wave state and you never are able to get prio up here, it's a great angle for a potential gank, but do not come up here and start grubs because you think, you know what? Garen's distracted. He's up here. This is all fog. I bet the enemy isn't going to do anything. And then guess what? They come over and they kill you. And now you've lost grubs. You've given up a kill. You've wasted your priority on the opposite side of the map down here, right? Your entire team is losing their minds. And now our game state is in shambles, right? And even though this is all relatively simple, a lot of this is known but not done in your solo queue games. And it's not done in the way that you communicate with your team, right? If I'm Hui here and I'm moving up, I'm saying on my way here, right? I'm saying assistance here. I'm saying, missing here. I don't know where my laner is, right? If I'm a Mumu, I should be saying I'm going here, here, and then I'm going to come over here, right? So I'm on my way. If I'm Maokai, I'm moving up and I'm warding, and I'm saying, hey, Ashe, be careful while I ward, okay? If I'm Ashe, I'm throwing an E out all the way across the map, and I'm saying, hey, here's the Nidalee, here's the Xerath, and I'm pinging this with blue ping, saying, hey, here they are, here they are, here they are, right? If I'm Ornn, I'm simply walking up here, I'm pinging on the way here out of base so my team knows I'm not coming to drag. If I have TP up, I should be pinging it in chat to let them know, hey, I can TP for drag. And I'm pinging the drag timer as well to say I will TP for drag, right? These are all things that can be coming out so that your game plan across all of your team members is clear. Now, maybe you have a bunch of team members who aren't pinging anything at all. That's okay. You can still say as a Mumu, hey, I'm on my way here. Okay. I would like assistance. Okay. Be careful. Be careful, right? And that's enough. That's more than enough to get the idea across. And then if these guys mess up, you can at least look at yourself and say, hey, you know what? I did everything I could. Sometimes you just get bad teammates. It happens. But that doesn't mean that we should stop communicating, because League at the end of the day is a team game. You need to be the biggest contributor. You need to be the win factor. You need to be the best player. You need to be the king on the Rift, right? There's your little crown and all that jazz. Maybe put some diamonds in it. You're so good looking. It's all great. But we have to communicate, okay? We have to communicate. So the next thing that we're going to move into is going to be vision. We've talked about it a lot this game, but I've made this illustration to just kind of show you how important vision is. And I want to ask you to think about what's on the screen right now. In this illustration, you could very easily say, hey, this is a great time for us to do Baron. You know, we have all of this vision and everything else. I think that we should pull the trigger. And I would disagree. And the reason I would disagree is because if you have a wave coming up here, it's much easier for your team to sit in these points of fog, right? Ornn's not going to get blown up by anybody in one shot. And by sitting in these points of fog, what you do is you create a window of time for the next 15 to 10 seconds where all you're waiting to do is you're waiting for these people to show farming a wave, to show pushing up on a ward, to show pushing up on a ward, to show pushing up on a ward. Because then what your team can identify is they can go, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to pick this Garen, right? We're going to go up here and we're going to one-shot this Garen and we're going to create a 5v4 situation and then we're going to do the Baron, right? And, or, you know, Amumu's over here and Lux is too pushed up. So Amumu's going to flash bandage, right? And Hui is going to follow up and we're going to pick the Lux and Maokai and Ashe are coming over here. You're always looking to secure some sort of automatic advantage before you start an objective. Because like we talked about earlier with team comps, right? If we start this Baron and this team gets purchase in the river over here and they're able to just throw skill shots and poke us out, there's a chance we lose the fight even though we have the better team comp. Now, likewise, if I'm the red team here, what I need to know is that this entire area is off limits, completely off limits. Unless Ezreal is throwing Qs, Xerath is throwing Ws, Nidalee is throwing spears into this bush, we don't know what's there. So once that's done, then we can move up. Then we can throw stuff into this bush. Then we can move up. Then we can throw stuff into this bush. Then we can move up. All of this vision has to be systematically cleared from each danger point before moving to the next as a unit, as a group, okay? So pretty much what Garen is doing here, Garen might be able to throw a little ward down here, but this is as far as Garen can go. Garen cannot go up here. He cannot go anywhere else because it's too risky. You're pretty much risking leaving your team in a 5v4 situation because you ended up dying up here because you got over aggressive worried about the Baron. So once you push this wave, what you need to do is you need to file back and help your team clear this vision. Likewise, this is why we talk about these points. Clearing wards, establishing vision, and adapting to movements. Like I said, once people show on the map, the other team has the ability to adapt their movements and look for picks. And this all happens in a split second. This can happen within 5 seconds. The entire game state can change based on people's position on the map. But more importantly, what we need to talk about is when we're talking about vision, let's say that our entire team just left base, right? Baron is up, so it's obviously 20 minutes. So let's talk about what everybody should have. First off, we should have one pink on our support. Our support has 3 wards, and then they have a sweeper, right? Our support is obviously going to be the pillar of our wards. Now, Maokai also has saplings, which makes it even easier. So the question is then, Hui and Ashe, what should you be doing? What wards should you have? Well, realistically, Ashe and Hui never want to walk this close to a bush that's in fog to put down a yellow trinket, because if you do, you risk dying. So there are only 2 things that I ever want to see mid laners and 80 carries with at 20 minutes into the game if you're not a super tanky character, and that's a blue trinket. Now the reason why a blue trinket is so good is because we have vision here, we don't have vision here, and we don't have vision here. But Hui and Ashe can stand right here and place these wards with a blue trinket deep into the enemy jungle. And maybe they don't stay permanently, but they might spot somebody out, right? And if they don't spot anybody out, they will stay permanently until they do. Now, the other thing is with these, we could say, okay, we don't know where anybody is, so maybe we just drop a blue trinket here or a blue trinket here just to see if we can spot anybody, right? Because we're looking to do the Baron. That's where the utility comes in. Now, as a top laner, ideally, if you're playing a very tanky champion, you don't need a blue ward because you have more of an ability to face check at 20 minutes because you're probably a little bit beefier. So you're going to want to run your team's secondary sweeper, and your jungler is probably also going to want to be running a sweeper because these are usually your bigger carries on the team in terms of health bar. So it's their job to move up into vision, into fog, and clear out those enemy wards and place new vision down with your backline, okay? So these are your scouts in terms of vision, and these are your ward clearers, and these are your people placing the wards. Now, on a team like this, you could say, okay, well, Nidalee's not very tanky, so should she have sweepers? Yes, she still should, and your Xerath should definitely still have sweepers as well. However, the difficult thing about your Xerath and your Ezreal is Ezreal's only going to have one blue trinket, and maybe you have one blue trinket here. So let's say that we have the same setup on the enemy team. The chances that you're going to be able to move up into these vision pockets is going to be a lot more difficult, right? Because you don't really have a frontline tank who's really running into those pockets for your team, because Garen needs to be in the side lane. So then how do we go about securing vision? Well, I can tell you this. At 20 minutes, almost all of these champions' abilities are on a 6-second cooldown. If you take 2 abilities and you throw them into every bush leading up into this area to clear out these bushes to establish a safe passage into the river, and let's say this bush too, across all of these champions, it might take you 24 seconds to establish that no one's in those bushes, and then establish your own vision by sweeping out and everything. Now, is it going to take you a longer time because you can't face check? Yes. Yes, it is. It is absolutely going to take you a longer time because you can't face check. However, it is safer, and in 24 seconds, I doubt these guys will be finished with Baron. And it is a lot better than getting picked off, right? And then guaranteeing that they have the Baron because they have a numbers advantage, because we didn't respect vision control around the objective. So as we're going through this, kind of recapping from what we've talked about, right? Paying attention to what side the junglers are on, paying attention to who is going to get there first and who has faster wave clear and faster jungle clear in terms of tempo, and then paying attention to who has priority, because whoever has priority can set up ideal macro and ideal wave states to establish tempo. Now, once those things are in line, these are the setups that we're looking at when we're talking about vision. And when you're talking about ward placement on the map, a lot of times you're going to want to see vision here, and then likewise, you're going to use the same vision areas, you know, here, and then maybe here on this side that you would use on this side. And then if we're mirroring it on the other side, you're going to want vision here, 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 probably here, and here, okay? And then that's mirrored, obviously, on this side. Those are your ideal ward placements. Now, you're always going to want to put your pinks closer to your team so that you can clear enemy vision and make them waste vision as they try to secure entry, right? So your pinks are going to be ideal in this bush, maybe in this bush, but it's a little bit further away from the objective pit, right? You don't want to put your pinks deep in enemy vision because then they're just going to be wasted, right? This is where you put your blue wards, this is where you put your yellow wards, etc. So that pretty much wraps it up in terms of vision specifically. So this is one of the last things we're going to cover as we kind of keep going here. And that's going to be that objectives require prep. They do not require an ace, okay? So there are only 3 steps that are required to secure any objective once you have tempo, priority, and vision. Let's say that the blue team has here, they have their vision, right? It's all set up. Everything's great. We've got our pinks, you know, wherever they need to be. Let's say that this is their vision set up, right? Obviously, the blue team has tempo on the grubs. It would be insane if they were already this far up at the points of grubs spawning, but let's say this is Baron, let's say it's grubs, let's say it's whatever, right? So when they rotate over to take this, there are only 3 things that need to happen with this team. They need to ping what they want to do and who they want to come. They need to commit to starting the objective. And then if you want to turn, it goes like this. Ping to the commit, Okay, we're no longer committing. Ping to turn. Too often in solo queue, you see people go, oh, we needed to turn the fight. We needed to turn the fight. We needed to drop the objective. But then you go back and you watch the replay and your jungler's sitting on here and your support's sitting on here and everybody else has pulled off for a 3v5. And guess what? Not a single person pinged assist to drop the objective. Not a single person pinged to target an enemy champion and let them know they were attacking, right? You don't get to get upset that your team incorrectly secured an objective and you didn't score an ace or a numbers advantage or win a team fight because you didn't communicate, right? There has to be a level of communication, otherwise there's never going to be any follow-up, right? No one in League of Legends is a mind reader, right? It's like being in a relationship. So, ideally, the reason why I say not an ace, and you can highlight this, you can bolden it, you can focus this a bajillion million times. Because how often have you seen this play out? Let's say that all 5 of these members move over to the grubs. All 5 of these members move over. All right, fight ensues right here. Let's say that we pick the support, we pick the jungler, they pick our AD carry, and they pick our Hui. And then we decide that instead of doing the grubs, even though we have a jungler advantage, what we're going to do is we're going to chase to try and kill the last 3 people. Oh, oopsies. We got kited. Our support died. Garen killed our tank. And we killed their support. And, oh, wait. And Amumu died. Okay, so now instead of getting grubs and being happy with the fact that you could have gotten grubs and a 2-for-1, right? Which honestly is favorable for your team, right? Instead of securing the objective and the kills, we now have gone, what, no objective, and we've gone 4 for 5 because we couldn't walk away. We couldn't walk away and just not try to ace. And quite often, this is a result of the same thing. It's communication where people don't want to tell their team to walk away from the fight and come back to the objective, right? The game is won via objectives, via getting towers, and via getting inhibitors and getting into the base and blowing up the Nexus. Teams can lose entire games being 20 kills up, especially in lower elo, if they do not master this concept, especially in a 40-minute game where when all 5 of you go down, you've all got 1-minute death timers. So now the enemy team has 50 seconds probably to get in on your base. And let's say, hopefully, there's not a double, triple stacked wave knocking at the door of your base that someone can TP to. And then over one fight here, you guys were 15 kills up, but now you've lost the entire game because we couldn't take an objective without trying to ace. This happens all the time. So, that brings us into the solo queue problem, right? Everybody knows that we're playing in solo queue. We're not playing in a 5-stack. We're not playing in a flex stack. Sometimes you have the benefit of playing in games with your friends, right? So when you have teammates who will not play the game correctly, what do? You ping respectfully. If they don't listen, fine. They don't listen. At least you tried. But you don't start spam pinging them. You word correctly so that you can give them as much information to make informed decisions as possible, right? If they don't make an informed decision, that's on them. But at least you gave them the information and you adapt your macro. So what does that mean? Okay, we've got 3 people showing up here. I'm Nidalee. I wanted these grubs. Well, guess what? My Xerath is out of base. So I'm going to rotate off of the grubs after my red buff. And let's say that drag is spawning in 30 seconds. And I'm going to give up the grubs because we don't have tempo and priority. And I'm going to run down here and I'm going to ping my bot lane. Please come help me and let's take drag and let's trade. Let's do what's called a cross map. And what a cross map is when you just go to the opposite side of the map from the enemy team and you try to secure whatever is on the opposite side. Okay? And that's where do what you can becomes an important factor. Because, yeah, if I was Nidalee and Xerath or Garen in this situation, I don't want to fight these 3 people over 3 grubs at all, because I have the feeling, given their CC and given their AoE and the amount of damage they do early, if they're all level 6, we're going to get absolutely rolled. And I don't want to get rolled. So, hey, Nidalee, go somewhere else. Xerath, just shove this wave in. Garen, catch this wave at your tower. Completely cool. You have to be willing to adapt. The game is never going to just go your way at every single objective fight, at every single moment in lane. So it's about being able to read the map, see what's happening, think, hey, what's the optimal thing for me to do in the next 20 seconds, in the next 10 seconds, in the next 5 seconds, right? And then pulling the trigger on these decisions as fast as we can so that way we can stay in the game. So that's kind of the last thing that we have here. And what I'll do now, since we've only got about 14-15 minutes left, if you guys want to say anything in chat, it looks like we've only got 2 people in here. I don't know if people came and went or how many people we had in here. It's kind of hard for me to look at the audience while I'm doing these. If you guys have any questions about any of the slides or any of the things we talked about, you can put them in chat right now. I'll read through chat. I'll pick out a couple of questions, and then we will wrap up. So does anybody have any questions? You can raise your hand. You can just drop it in chat. Any questions at all about any of the stuff we covered? And while people are thinking or typing, I'll just kind of run back through the slides here a little bit. Obviously, jungle positioning, important. Team composition is important. Objective tempo is important. Priority is important. Priority can give you tempo on certain sides of the map, like bot lane or top lane dependent. And vision, extremely important when trying to do objectives. Doing objectives in fog, terrible idea. Never a good idea. Don't do it. And lots of pings to communicate with your team to make what you're trying to accomplish clear if you're not in voice comms. And then, as always, the solo queue problem, which is just people are going to int, people are going to feed, people won't know how to play the game. It's very common, you know, it happens in Iron, and it's happening in Challenger games. It's always a debate, you know. There's always going to be at least one lobotomized League player running around the Rift, so you do what you can. Well, I'm not seeing... Oh, I see someone typing. Okay, a couple people are thinking, so I'll give it some time. And while they're thinking, I'll just kind of talk through maybe a few other points here. A lot of people sometimes ask, like, well, what do I do if no lanes have priority? That's a really good question. So what I recommend when no lanes have priority, because it's like, oh, everybody's going to be able to move to the objective whenever they want. When every lane has priority, very, very rarely is the enemy team cross-mapping their vision to check for invades. So let's say that every single lane has priority because all of these people lost early, right? As a Mumu, what can I do? Well, if I'm a Mumu, I know that it's going to take 30 seconds for Nidalee to do these grubs. So ideally what I want to do at some point in this game is I want to end up reversing my clear so I can do this. And then once I get over here to my chickens, I'm immediately going in to check this blue. I'm going in to check these wolves, potentially check this Gromp. I might be able to get a really cheeky flank and do something bot, but even if I can't, even if I only get one camp away and then get back to my jungle to reset, at least I'm doing something instead of nothing. I hear people talk about that a lot, where it's like, well, none of my lanes have prio, so there was nothing I can do. And it's like, well, If none of your lanes have prio, it's a great opportunity to gank in your dead time. It's also a good opportunity to run away from the enemy jungler's strong side and play into their weak side in your strong side and try and split the map, you know, to just alleviate pressure at least somewhere. Likewise, what we talked about in our other game, when we talked about strong side, weak side, you know, if you're the Ornn in that instance and your Amumu has decided to split the map here, you just have to understand that you're going to be weak sided the majority of the game. So your goal is just to survive under tower, collect as much XP and gold as you can safely, and then scale into late game and hope this side of the map wins. If they don't, they don't, you know, can't win them all, but that's your best option. Alright, let's say I die top, I don't have TP, but my mid laner does, and the enemy top laner is pushing in my wave. Is it okay for me to TP, is it okay for my mid to TP top to clear the wave while I go and clear the wave, etc., and then switch? So that's something that's really interesting. So let's say that you die, right, and obviously you probably died somewhere up here in lane. Or maybe Garen dove you, so Garen's crashing a wave. Now, your mid laner is here, and there's two things happening here. So what we need to talk about is what Xerath is doing, because if Xerath is in lane and shoving a wave, I would rather my Hui stay here than immediately TP top. And the reason why is because mid lane has the most important tower in the game, because once the mid lane tower falls, it opens up this entire quadrant of the map for the enemy to move in freely and start establishing vision. And it makes it very hard for your jungler to maintain getting their camps, and it makes it very hard for your team to have a point of entry into any of the objective fights later on. So with that being said, I think that mid lane tower is the most valuable. So if their TP is not going to result in the mid lane tower going down, then I think it's fine. Especially if you know that this guy just reset and you're going to be able to match his reset out of base, meet him here, and then by the time you clear one wave and your mid laner clears one wave, immediately you guys need to exchange, you know, notes and go back to your standard laning. The difficult thing with this in solo queue specifically is quite often what'll happen is this guy will TP up here and he'll stay here for 2 to 3 waves, and then you get stuck mid for 2 to 3 waves, and this is not where you're supposed to be, and this is not where he's supposed to be. Now, if you guys start winning these matchups, maybe you just keep the lane swap, but more often or not, what happens is that this person wants their lane back, or vice versa, and no one communicates, hey, I'm on my way back to my lane, you need to go back to your lane and give me my lane back. And because no one pings, what happens more often than not is, I'm going to move up here and help you. Oh, thanks for the help. I moved here to help you. Okay, now I'm going to move back up here. Well, wait a second. Now 2 of us are up here facing this Garen for some reason, and Xerath just shoved 2 waves into the mid tower, right? So that's where the TP situation gets a little tricky. Ideally, based on your question, I hope that I've answered it. Ideally, the solution is just not to die top. You know, if we're not solo dying in our lanes, then we don't have to think about how to salvage things. But that would be kind of my take on that situation specifically. I think we've only got about 5 minutes left, and I don't think anybody else has any questions based on what I'm seeing. So I am going to wrap this class up. The video will be posted on, the Metafy course, per usual. It'll also show up on YouTube probably in a week or two, so you can catch it there. But thank you guys for coming. I hope you learned something. I'm Strike, and I will see you guys in the next one.